आज की ताज़ा खबर। बेंगलुरु में रहने वाले लू और अमेरिका में रहने वाले सिड आपसे कुछ बात करना चाहते हैं। संगीतकार राजेश के साथ आपका स्वागत है लूसिड में।
Hey everyone, welcome to the fifth episode of F1 APM Podcast. I'm Shaurya and I am really excited for today's episode. I have Deekshit on. Deekshit is a like he got his product management offer very recently. The goal with my podcast was to talk to PMs who who broke in recently, and I honestly don't know someone who broke into the field as recently as Deekshit. Deekshit and I met on LinkedIn, and we've just been in touch. So I'm so excited to talk to him today and share some of his insights with you.
Hey
So
Shaurya,
hey
I'm super
Deekshit, welcome
excited
to
to
the
be
show. Thanks
here
for taking out
and
time.
thank you so much for doing this. I think there's so many aspiring product managers who actually don't know what to do, and I think this podcast is going to really help them. So yeah, I'm super excited to be here.
Amazing, dude. Amazing. Thanks for taking our time again. So, yeah, let's just dive straight in, right? So, if you want to just introduce yourself, just tell a little, tell people a little bit
Sure.
about
Yeah,
your
I can
background. I
start with
think that
that.
would be a good segue
So
to
I
just
am
starting it
an
off.
engineering. I'm an engineer basically. Did my undergrad in 2019 in electronics and communications engineering back in Bangalore. Post that, I worked for a couple of years as a firmware developer at Cypress Semiconductors. There, I realized that the semiconductor space is very slow. Each project takes about like 8 to 9 months. You need to wait a lot of time to see the impact of work that you're doing. That's when I realized, hey, I want to do a master's. And I think when I was thinking about masters, I'm like, should I do MS in CS or MS in EC? Versus, I really liked the business part of things as well. So I was like, what about those? And then I was thinking about MBA. And
Mm-hmm.
initially, I was like, hey, I think I should do MS plus MBA to do degrees and stuff like that. But I'm like, okay, that's not feasible. I have to, study for like 4 years, and I don't have that much amount of cash. That's when I was looked at the alternative courses like MEM, MIS, and stuff like that. And I started reading about MEM programs, and it was very
Mm-hmm.
interesting. And I think I was going through the Duke website, and one specific line resonated with me. It said, "This is a program for engineers who want to understand the business side of things and be in technology." And that's when I realized, oh, this is what an MEM is, and that's what I want to do. And one of my schoolmates actually did MEM, and I spoke to him, and he gave me like the full details and how it's good, what's bad, and that's when I realized I want to do MEM. So that was the phase of where I knew I wanted to do a master's, and I was looking at what are the job opportunities
Mm-hmm.
after an MEM. So it was like consulting, analytics, product, and stuff like that.
Right.
And that's when I read, oh, like what is a product manager? Because in a semiconductor company there were no product managers, so there were only project managers. And then I saw what a product manager did, read about product
Right.
management, and I saw that, oh, this is very interesting. So that's how I got introduced to the world of product management.
Got it. Got it. Amazing. So, in terms of like when you applied for Duke, that's the time you start thinking about which other roles you could get once you graduate, and then from the point that you were you landed here and you started your studies at Duke, you did you know that product management is the only thing you want to target, or were you keeping your options open?
To
How
be
did
really
that work
honest,
out?
I knew that I wanted to be a product manager, because what happened was after I got my Duke admit, I left my job at Cypress,
Mm-hmm.
and had like about 2 months before I came to Duke. And I, I thought I'm just gonna take a
Okay.
break and just chill for some time, because I've never gotten a break even after undergrad, because I had internship and then directly start my full
Mm-hmm.
time. But then 1 week into my break, I felt really bored. I'm like, what do I do now? So then I'm like, why don't I do an internship in product management? Because I was really interested in this, but I had no clue if anyone would give me anyone would give me a role in a internship for 2 months in the role of product management. But luckily enough, a startup called Paperflight
Mm-hmm.
took a chance on me because they were also growing. They wanted to know how would a product manager would fit into their company, and it was like the perfect fit. I worked as a product manager there for
Okay.
2 months. I realized like all the things that I read and watched, I saw it in real life, and that's when I realized, oh, this is very interesting, and I think this is what I want to do. So when I came into Duke, I came in with a set mind that hey, I want to do product management. But after coming into Duke, I realized, oh, product management is not that simple. There are like multiple fields within product management. That's what I got to realize at Duke.
Got it, got it. And I think that highlights such an important point, right? Because I think when people, like from the discovery point, when people feel that, okay, product management is something that sounds cool, looks cool, the more we read about it, it looks interesting to the point where you actually do get your first break or like do an internship. I think that's a good validation time for whether, because it's not an easy job by any means, right? There's so much going on. So it's good to get that validation phase and like that clarity before you were actually here. So, you can have that focus and then just, focus on how do you get your first break into product management in the US. So like having that experience, I think was great. So, okay, you're at Duke right now. You know that product management is something you want to do, and what was the next step like? And I believe like you did two product management internships while
Yes.
you were at Duke, right? Correct me if I'm wrong. Got it. So, in terms of just going about your first internship, you obviously had some good experience back in India. Having an engineering degree, I think, like plays a big role as well. But in terms of coming here and getting your first product management
So I
internship, what
think
was that process
uh,
like for you?
getting that PM experience before coming to Duke was a good validation. And I think people need to find some kind of experience just to see if product management is a good career for them. Because I've seen a lot of people who don't want to do coding or
Mm-hmm.
engineering work, and they're like, hey, I'll do product management because I get to just talk to people and just say what needs to be done, and they do it. So it's more than that. That's why they get paid so much money
Yep.
too. So I think they need to think about they need to get an experience to see if they actually like it. And with respect to the internships, so the first one that I did at Duke was actually I just helped out a startup. Uh, so this startup called Hula, which was a social
Okay.
based app out of New York. And I just went on Angel List and I just was checking for internships. And there were a lot of unpaid internships by
Mm-hmm.
startups because they couldn't pay and they're very small. And I just reached out to one of them because it
Mm-hmm.
sounded really nice.
Right.
It was a social app, so I wanted to see how
Mm-hmm.
B2C apps work and how product management comes into play there. So I reached out to them. I just had a call with them, I think with the founder
Mm-hmm.
and one of their other product managers, and they asked me a question of how to improve their checkout experience as well as ticketing experience. So basically, it was informal
Okay.
product design interview question. So there was no like frameworks and stuff. So at
Mm-hmm.
that call, it was really fun talking to them, and they came back to me saying that they'd like to have me. So I just did it for like 3 months, I think from December to March. But that was a really great experience because I got
Mm-hmm.
to collaborate with people who I didn't know and was remote. So I had to set up that connection with engineers as well as
Mm-hmm.
designers. So that was a really great learning experience.
Got it, got it. And I think like that's helpful for people to know because when it comes to internships, I know there are like multiple schools of thought, and one is that unpaid, like there shouldn't be unpaid internships, and at least if startups cannot afford to pay people, they should at least give them minimum wage. But like I can definitely see the value, and like obviously learning from your story, but like in general, just see the value for people who like students who really just want to learn. I think that could be a good experience, and like and you cannot really say that this is what people should do, but like that's definitely an option that people should not completely eliminate, because sometimes those small learning experiences like working at a startup can really be stepping stones into getting other roles, getting that experience, so that you have something tangible to talk about. You have that, because a lot of like catch 22 that people fall into is like, how do you get your first product break without having product experience, right? So I think volunteering at a startup, doing an unpaid internship at a startup, or like just building your own side project, I think these are a couple of really nice
Yeah,
ways to get
exactly.
the
And I
ball
think
rolling.
one more
So
thing,
that's something.
when I've spoken to a lot of PMs, when I've networked with them, one of the main things they
Hmm.
say is what people look at for product managers is that drive and like bias for action.
Okay.
And they can clearly see that in
Hmm.
your resume, right? Like, say, if the
Hmm.
last experience that you showcase is your work from like
Hmm.
8 months ago, that means you've not done that much work in the past 8 months. Like,
Hmm.
say you worked and you're studying right now, you either have to showcase some projects or showcase something that shows them
Hmm.
that, hey, from an engineer, you've been transitioning, you've been doing projects to showcase that you're learning the business aspects as well. So I think that's something people miss, and people should focus on getting varied experiences to build a product mindset.
Right, that's a great point, and actually, that's something like it's great to think about it from that point of view, because I've never thought about it from just a lens of because having a bias for action. That now that I've been a product manager for a couple of months, I can see why that's such a big asset, and that's required for PMs. So if you can, if aspiring PMs can like showcase that they've constantly involved
Exactly.
themselves in it, and it does not have to be just building products. It can be other activities, like for example doing your podcast. And I know that you run your own podcast as well, so that's something that I wanted to talk about as well, like in terms of just getting into product management, or it can be because product management is like an umbrella term for so many different things, right? Communication is obviously like a big part of it.
True.
You need to be comfortable to speak to multiple people, multiple stakeholders. So do you think like that added some value in terms of just having a profile, or like just building up your like resume? Do you think that
Yeah,
that added to some
I would
account
definitely say
into something?
yes. I'd put it in two terms. One, in terms of like the personal growth I've had, like
Hmm.
doing a podcast, like has really helped me to structure my
Hmm.
thoughts, be in the moment and listen to the other person carefully. And that's like really essential for a product manager as well. And the
Hmm.
second thing is it builds that online presence as well, right? So, funnily enough, during my summer internship, I was working remote, and I had a lot of
Hmm.
time like after work, and I just started reading a lot about like business and tech and trying to post things on LinkedIn relating both of them.
Hmm.
And every product weekly meeting
Hmm.
in my company, my director would point that out, and we tell everyone in my team to just go check it out. That we were like 20 PMs in the company, and every time, every week, I would get so embarrassed. And
Hmm.
when he says that, hey, you should go check out Deekshit's LinkedIn because it's amazing. I'm like, damn, like I did not imagine him to do that. And he's like, recently, even when I spoke to him, he was like, how's that LinkedIn thing of yours going? Where you were posting. I'm like, I had to stop it because of job search, and he didn't have an answer. But yeah, like I think podcast, doing side projects, it really helps because one side you get that personal growth, and the second one it gives you stories to talk about with people because you
Hmm.
get those experiences, right? So I think it's
Hmm.
definitely been helpful for me.
Right. No, like there's so much to unpack there. And I think like I can relate to a little bit of what you're saying as well, because when I started writing content on LinkedIn, the goal was just to have more visibility, and somehow that magically helping me get a job quicker. Like that was just the naive goal that I started off with. But the more I started writing about like product management stuff, I realized that
Yeah.
content acts as a magnet to attract like-minded people. So, like very organically I could find other aspiring PMs, and like someone to have like someone to do mock interviews with, someone to just share off like other PM resources with, that hey, this is a good book and this is a good article that you should check out. So putting yourself out there, talking about the things that really interest you, like it does not only have tangible effects in terms of having more visibility and you getting more noticed by recruiters or other hiring managers, but it also just helps you learn more and meet like-minded people. So there's really no downside in putting yourself out there, and of course at the end of the day that showcases bias for action, which is something that you're going to need in your job if you're when you break into product management. I'm glad
Exactly.
that we talked about this for sure. So in terms of getting your second PM internship, right? How was that search like? So first one, you mentioned that you were at Angel List and you applied through there. That led to an interview, and that's how you got it. How was the second process like? How much was
Yeah.
it networking? How was
So
it
the
cold
first one,
application? What
I'd
was that like?
say, is not it was not a huge concerted effort. I just went ahead. I'm like, hey, unpaid internship. I'll just apply and see, just to get that experience. It was there was no
Right.
I wasn't scared about that. But about the second internship, it was my summer internship at Life 360. And when I started my Duke journey, I called up my friend who already graduated Duke and is a product manager. I'm like, hey, buddy, I need to be a PM. Tell me how. And he was like, it's not a easy task. You need to put in a lot of effort. He made me come into a state of mind where where I made sure that I put in a lot of effort to get the job I need, because he said like PM is one of the most competitive roles
Okay.
because anyone can apply. You don't need a CS degree, you don't need any particular degree, and undergrads can apply, master students can apply, and MBA folks
Yep.
can apply. So there's so many people, and you don't have that much work experience because generally PMs need like 5 years of work ex. So when he said that, I'm like, okay, that makes sense, and I need to put in a lot of effort. And I started my journey very early in respect to cold applications. I think I joined end of August at Duke, and from September 15th, I started applying. I think Google was my first application, Google's APM internship. Obviously, I got rejected, but yes, I started applying there, and that's where I started building habit of applying every day. But throughout my fall semester, I'd say I got like two
Okay.
interviews from good companies, SiriusXM and Comcast, but I did not pass through. And I'm like, I called up my friend again. I'm like,
Okay.
I'm applying to so many companies. I got these many calls, but I'm not doing that well. But he gave me a good metric to measure in a cold application to interview rate. He said like, for if you have a good resume, for every 60 cold applications you put, you'll at least get one call. And if it's a great resume, for every 30 applications you put, you'll get one call. And that was a good metric for me. I'm like, oh, okay, this makes sense. I don't know if it is true, but at least it gave me a sense of relief. Like, oh, this is fine. But I think December was the worst for me. I just thought like, what is going on? I have like one more semester. I'm putting in so much effort. It's not going anywhere. I remember calling up my parents saying that I really want to do a PM job. So if I don't get an internship, I'll come back to India and be an intern there, and then come back to school here. They were like, okay, like whatever you think is the right thing. But I think January is where all my efforts paid off, because from I think second to third week of Jan, I got a lot of calls. I got like 6 to 8 interview calls from really good companies, and that's when I think
Oh
in
wow.
February first to second week, I converted into an internship at Life 360.
Got it, got it. And I think like after talking to so many people about like breaking into PM and like from my experience as well, like I see that there's like a tipping point where you feel like you're putting in a lot of effort and you're not seeing results, but
Yeah,
then once you hit that tipping point, right, within a week you get multiple interviews. Within like you'll be applying for jobs for 6 months, and then within and interviewing for 6 months, and then within a span of like a couple of weeks you'll get multiple
yep,
offers. I think like that's like a recurring theme that I keep seeing. So in terms of getting those interviews, like was it just cold applications on different job boards, or was it a mix of networking, reaching out to people?
sure.
Like if you want to break it down, I think that would
Yeah,
shed
for sure.
a lot of light
So,
on just
as
how
I
the
said, I
process
think
works.
all the knowledge I've got is from my friend, like with respect to applications. So he said, you can't rely on one thing, and you need to do multiple things. So as everyone says, like you need to cold apply
Yep.
plus network. I started doing that, and I'm like, hey, I'm applying. Say like 10 companies a day, 20 companies a day, based on the number of job postings that are there. I'm reaching out to a lot of my seniors for advice and see if there are internship opportunities there. But I think for me, majorly during my internship period, I got most of my calls from cold
Mm-hmm.
applications, and I think in terms of networking, I didn't have
Mm-hmm.
a clear set of questions or framework to ask them. Like I didn't know what exactly do I speak to them about.
Okay.
I've asked them advice. I kind of know how to prepare for product management, and one thing I
Mm-hmm.
realized for all of them is like I've spoken to like say 50 to 60 people over like that whole period, and everyone had a different
Mm-hmm.
journey. So like no one
Mm-hmm.
could pinpoint saying that this is the
Mm-hmm.
strategic framework that helped me get a job or an interview. And that's where I realized like you need to do a mix of both and do it consistently, and one of them will pay it off.
Mm-hmm.
And to specifically come into my internship, how I got interviews, I think like 90% of them were from cold applications, and I think 10% was from cold emails.
Mm-hmm.
So what I used to do was like, say
Okay.
I have a job, I see a job posting for this company that is looking for an intern. Go to that company page, see who their product
Okay.
directors are,
Mm-hmm.
and try to find their email and just email them saying that, hey, I
Mm-hmm.
really love your company, and here are three of my experiences that would suit well into your intern that you're looking for. And that was, I think, really impactful
Mm-hmm.
because there were so many people who actually responded back, and some of them said that, hey, we filled the position, but we'd love to
Mm-hmm.
stay in contact and stay in touch. And some people actually replied back saying I would pass this on to the hiring manager, which was great. So I think cold emailing was like a really
Right.
good strategy that I applied.
Right. That's great because cold emailing is something I think which is like people don't talk about it that much. It's either like you apply cold, like either you do cold applications or you try to get your network your way into finding the hiring manager. So I think cold emailing is like somewhere in the middle. So how did you go about trying to identify the like okay you can find product directors and people who work in product on LinkedIn. How did you go about identifying like their
Yeah,
emails? Like,
I think a good
is there anything
framework to
tactical that
use
you can
here
share?
is, so back in my first internship or first experience at Paperflight, it was a B2B SaaS company. So there was like a good sales team that was trying to generate
Mm-hmm.
leads, and that's where I was thinking like, hey, how do they get
Okay.
leads, right? So that's when I started looking into sales tools, and that's when I realized there are these multiple
Okay.
tools called Hunter.io, rocketreach.com, where you just
Mm-hmm.
type in their name and you get their email IDs. And most of the times, all companies have these structured email IDs. It's like first name dot last name at company.com, or just the first name at company.com. So I used to like try multiple iterations based on my interest on that company, and that's how I would find their email IDs. And the
Mm-hmm.
second one, how do you know if you're emailing the right person? So what I would do is like when you go through the job description, generally they talk
Mm-hmm.
about the team they're hiring for. If it's not the big tech, if it's like companies that's hiring for a specific team, they
Mm-hmm.
talk about the team. So go and search for the product director
Mm-hmm.
that is there in that particular team, or the senior manager or manager in that particular team, and find like make a list of like 5 to 10 names, and send that email to them, and hopefully one or two will respond. And if your resume really matches what they're looking for, they would definitely call you back, because if they get a person
Mm-hmm.
that is the right fit, why would they say no? Because you've sent them a cold email. So yeah, I'd say that is a I'd say thinking of it in a sales perspective, sales framework, like how do you generate leads, and trying to
Mm-hmm.
use their tools is actually is has been really helpful.
That's great, and that sounds like such a unique. I like simplistic approach, but like I'm sure 99% of the people like would not do it, and like goes back to what you said is if you feel that you are someone who can add some unique value to what they are like what a company is looking for, and if you put the effort to reach out to them via email, like why wouldn't they like get back to you, right? And sometimes even if they fill those roles, more some people will just get back to you saying that okay, that role has been filled, and in like worst case scenario, you can just be in touch with them, and that's like someone else that and you can count on for later. So there's really no downside to trying it as well and thinking of it
Exactly.
as a lead
And
generation
another
mechanism.
thing I
So
want to say
that's
is
great,
one more
amazing.
main
So
mistake
yeah.
I did during my fall semester was my focus was more on preparation because coming from India, we all had campus placements and we did not have to worry about company what
Mhm.
getting interviews. We had to only worry about cracking the interviews.
Mhm.
Yeah. So that's the mindset I came
Clearing.
here with. I'm like,
Mhm.
if I
Right.
apply,
Right.
companies are going to reach out to me. Why would they not do it? I'm a good candidate. But then the system in the US is very different. It's not like college specific. It's a general pool of applications. So you need to get your resume right in the front. So I think that was one mistake where I spent 80% of my time preparing and 20% trying to apply. But the what shifted during my full time search was I did the reverse. I put in 80% of my time in applying and networking and getting calls, and that really helped. So I can talk about the full time search later. But yeah, I think that's one thing people need to think about too.
Got it. And that's such a great call out there, because getting an interview and clearing them are obviously two very different skills, equally
Yep.
important, because you can't have one or the other. You need to do both to get an offer. And yeah, so like focusing more on like if you're getting more interviews but you're not able to clear them, versus that your preparation might be good but you're just not getting enough interviews, like these two situations would need completely different sort of action items on like things that you focus on. So that's a great call out there. One thing that I did want to ask is, so you mentioned that 90% of your interviews were through cold applications. So where were you applying? Like, was it just a couple of job boards, or did you just used to go to company's website and apply?
It's
Like, where
majorly
exactly were
LinkedIn.
you applying
There were
on?
other platforms that people suggested, like
Mm-hmm.
Indeed. I forgot the other one. Handshake,
Mm-hmm.
the university's hiring portal. But I think
Right.
most majorly I spent my time on LinkedIn. I think LinkedIn is more than sufficient to get your calls. So yeah.
Got it, got it. And I would just say that these things
Mhm.
are so subjective, in the sense that, so from my personal experience,
Oh
cold
wow.
applying on LinkedIn never worked for me. I never heard of like anything back from LinkedIn, but Indeed and Angel List, I like my ratio from
Right.
cold applications to getting an interview was pretty high. But
Mm.
like for LinkedIn, I don't know why it just never worked for me. So I think the
True.
point here is that since different things work for different people,
Yep.
unless you try out bunch of things, you don't know what is going to work for you. So the goal is just to
Yeah.
talk to people to see what might work, and then try it out to see if that does work for you, and then
Definitely,
sort
I
of
agree with
doubling
that.
down on
Yeah.
things that do work for you. So yeah, thanks for sharing that. Just moving on to, I think the next part would be, and I did want to talk to you about is, how do you take care of your mental health in terms of applying through so many interviews, just because sometimes it just feels like when you're applying coldly, it just feels like your application is falling on deaf ears. You're not even sure if people are like, yeah, like if there are actual humans looking at your resume. So how do you pick yourself up, and how do you sort of self motivate yourself, or
Yeah,
like
I
just
think
any thoughts on that, like how
when
do you keep
I
yourself going?
came into Duke, I was applying, and I'd say like the first 3 months, like I was very excited. I'm like, hey, like I'm transitioning, I'm gonna get good jobs. So I need to put in the effort, so you can push yourself. But I think
Right.
after my internship,
Mm-hmm.
when my company said, hey, we might not give you an offer because of the economic conditions, we're not sure. That's when it was really hard. I'm like, I
Mm-hmm.
cannot do this all over again. And that's when I decided I don't
Mm-hmm.
want to do this alone. I need to get some support,
Mm-hmm.
get a group of friends, and like I have amazing friends who've been with me during the internship as well, and now too. And doing the
Mm-hmm.
work with them and sitting with them and doing the whole process together and sharing what is working with each other, I think really helped us. and just having that another person with you to go through it and share like whatever both of you are thinking. So I think that is the main thing that's really helped me. And I think when I came into Duke, I had this mindset like, hey, like I have this extra knowledge
Mm-hmm.
that my friend has given me, specific tips my friend has given me, and if I share that with my other
Mm-hmm.
friends, what if they get the same interviews as me, and I might not be able to crack it. There was that one
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
small,
Mm-hmm.
conundrum in my mind, but like as time went on, like what I realized is every resume is different, it's not the same. And I'm like, there's no point of doing this. Like at the
Mm-hmm.
end, like you need to be there for your friends, they are your friends, it's friends over anything else. And that's when I realized, okay, let me tell them also and let me help them. And funnily enough, we all applied to the same number of jobs because during our internship we created a WhatsApp group, we used to share all job applications, and everyone applied to the same
Mm-hmm.
jobs, and no one got the same interviews. It was around 6 to 7 people, and every day we used to share
Mm-hmm.
like 10 to 15 jobs. People would apply,
Right.
but no one's got the same interview because everyone had different experiences and background. And that's when I realized like there's no point of like keeping secrets or not talking to your friends about your job search process. I'd say like find, like especially being an immigrant in the US, find the set of people that you really trust, and care for them, and they'll care for
Mm-hmm.
you, and that's going to really help you throughout. So yeah.
Right. Yeah. Thanks for sharing that. And I think just like espousing that positive sum mentality that, at the end of the day, it feels like it might seem like there are not enough jobs out there, but then there are enough roles out there for everyone. And because everyone has their own unique strengths and unique profiles, resumes, it's everyone is uniquely positioned for like different roles as well. So eventually everyone is going to get there, but just going through that process together with a bunch of people like that, that really helps in terms of knowledge sharing and just having that support group. So yeah, thanks for sharing that. In terms of moving towards, I think the last like part of the podcast, and obviously the most important part of the podcast. So you've done your internship, yeah, your second internship, and you briefly mentioned that your you did a good job. Your team, your manager was really happy with you, but they said that they might not give you the return offer due to the economic conditions. And from that point towards actually them getting you like giving you the return offer, what was that process like? And the reason why I think this will be helpful to people is because I've talked to so many people, and like I find that people are in a similar boat. And at that time, how do you deal with it? Like, do you like should you still be hopeful that this might work out? Should you should you still be in touch but apply to other roles? And like just in terms of how did you go about getting that return offer once it was told to you that the team likes you,
For
everything is
sure, yeah.
positive, but we
I
just have
think
to see how it goes.
during your internship, it's very important to establish transparency and making sure that your manager
Mm-hmm.
knows what you really want out of the internship. Because even undergrads come here for internship and they just want to come here for the experience and go back to college, right? So it's
Mm-hmm.
very important to mention that, hey,
Right.
that you're graduating in December and that you want to pursue a full-time career in PM, starting after your graduation. So setting those expectations with your manager is
Mm-hmm.
very, very important. And I think that is number one. And second one, I would say, was I was very fortunate to be in a company where people were very open and transparent, and they wouldn't like hide stuff and like
Mm-hmm.
just say the good things to you, just so that you feel good.
Right.
They would have those difficult conversations. I think that was really
Mm-hmm.
important. And the other thing I think really worked for me was what my
Right.
manager did in the beginning was he gave me a list of people to go and talk to in the team. So gave me like a set of designers that I have to talk to, a
Okay.
set of engineers, a set of customer support people. This was not for a specific project. This was just to for me to go introduce myself and talk to them
Mm-hmm.
and see what they think about the product and how I can bring
Mm-hmm.
impact
Right.
without knowing about the project. So I think that was really helpful because when I left, there were a lot of people
Mm-hmm.
who were like, who knew me and like who could vouch for me for like, for me to come back to full time. So I think these were the things that really worked. And in the end, I did a good job in the internship, and my manager said that, hey, we really love you, but we're not sure if we can give you an offer. And one rule, at least here, is if you don't have the offer letter in your hand, you never have an offer. So that's the rule I always follow by. So when they said that,
Right.
I came to my last semester into Duke with the mindset that I don't have a job. And I think the
Mm-hmm.
first day of college,
Mm-hmm.
my friend and I sat and started applying, talking to people. And we also realized that the framework that we used for
Mm-hmm.
internship, we need to like trim it down and be more specific. And we created a list of companies that we want to
Mm-hmm.
join, network with them, find out who are the hiring managers, what are the job openings like, and apply. So
Right.
but meanwhile, at the same time, parallelly, I kept in touch with my VP and director. I had a call with them just to
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
get some advice on product management, because these are veterans in the product management field. So just to get advice and talk about like how their
Right.
product is going and moving forward with respect to competition, and what other competitors are doing to
Mm-hmm.
one up Life 360. So that's how I kept in touch. And
Mm-hmm.
I also asked them like, hey, I'm really interested, what are your thoughts? They said, we really like you, we want to give you an offer, but we're not sure, so give us some time and we'll get back to you. So that conversation was going on, but
Right.
here I was still
Right.
applying. I interviewed with companies like Walmart,
Mm-hmm.
and it was a tough decision. I had to choose between Walmart
Mm-hmm.
and Life 360. But because the trust and transparency of these leaders, I'm like, hey, I want to join Life 360 again. So yeah, that was the story.
That's amazing, dude. And I think like one thing is really important to note here is that when you're like if someone is like finished with an internship, and even though you're not sure if you have that return offer or not, just genuinely being in touch with people and maintaining those relationships is important, because as in your stories, like the best case scenario is that that can lead to a job offer and you can get that offer that you wanted. But the worst case scenario is that
Yep.
you still have like a mentor, you still have someone to count on, rely on later down the road. So there's really no downside in like sort of
Yes, yes,
taking an
yes.
extra effort to maintain those relationships. Right, but thank you again, Deekshit, for taking out time and sharing your insights. I am sure this would help people, and this is a conversation that if I was trying to break into product management, I would have definitely found helpful. So
Definitely,
thanks
Shaurya.
again
Thanks
for
so
taking
much
out
for
time
having me
and
here.
sharing your insights. Yep, and to the listeners, thank you so much again for listening, and I'll see you on the next episode.